Let's have a look at command line file management. When you're ready to create, move, remove, or copy files around the file system, you'll need a series of command line interface commands to do so. We'll take a look at the commands that enable those types of interactions now. Have a look at the diagram that shows some common file management commands. We'll take a look at each of these and give them a practice within our terminal. The first command we'll look at is the makedir, make directory command. For this command, you'll need to supply the argument of the directory you wish to create. When you're ready to make directories, it's important to make sure you're in the right directory as well as you understand what may be affected. Here, I'll create a working directory I'll call practice. mkdir, or makedir, will create a directory that we specify. In this case, we could take an absolute or relative path. Ask yourself what the absolute and relative paths would be for a locally created working directory called practice. I'll use the relative path and just declare the name to be practice. That will create a directory here named practice. We can see it here. Another way to have created that directory using absolute paths would have required us to iterate through the entire pathing /home/student/practice. While not incorrect, you can see how there's a drastic difference in efficiencies between using the absolute or the relative path in this case. Clearly, the relative path of just stating the word practice was simple. Now that we have a practice directory to work with, we'll look at the other commands so that we can interact within. The cp command, or copy command, allows us to specify a source file and a destination file. As we learned about navigating, I'll cd or change directory into the relative pathed practice location. If I print my working directory, you'll see where I'm located now. We know that we created a sample.txt in a previous demo. What I'll do is I'll use relative pathing to copy that to a new location within our current working directory. I'll use the cp command and relative pathing to the sample.txt file in the subdirectory above. Since I want to locate that in a file here, I can use the dot notation for the current working directory. If I list out the contents, I now see that my current working directory has a copy of that file. This would have been the same as if I would have said /home/student sample.txt and copied it to the absolute path of /home/student, the practice subdirectory we created, and then the same file name. I hope you're starting to realize the difference of value between absolute and relative pathing. Here, relative pathing is more valuable, but that's not always the case. Keep in mind those two concepts as we continue to grow our Linux skills. We may oftentimes want to copy a directory and its contents. When that's our intended result, we'll need the option -r for recursion to the copy command. Let's try that now. We can do cp-r. We know that we have home, student, desktop as a subdirectory, and if we wanted to put that in our practice directory, we could simply use dot, as that's our current working directory. When we now list the results, we see that we have not only the subdirectory desktop copied in, but all contents within. Unfortunately, the desktop subdirectory didn't contain any contents, but that illustrates that we would have copied the entire directory as well as all of its contents using the -r option. When we need to move a file to a new file name or rename a file, we can use the mv command. This is useful, like I said, in both renaming as well as relocating a file. We see that we have the desktop subdirectory and the sample.txt, and we're working from the home student practice area. If we wanted to move the sample.txt file to a new name of example.txt, we would use the command move sample.txt, the original file, to what the new name we'd want it to be called. In this case, example.txt. We then list out the contents and see the name has changed. If we needed to remove a file, we'll use the rm command for remove. We'll simply specify the file name we wish to delete with the arguments for rm. Here, let's delete the example.txt file. When we list out the contents, we can see that it's gone. When you need to remove a directory, you'll need to pass a specific flag for -r to remove the contents within. Linux has some safeguards to make sure you don't delete all contents within a directory without realizing they're there, and thus requires you to pass an option flag to do so. Let's do two things. Let's place a file within the directory we saw, and then go through these commands. I'll cd into the desktop directory that we copied over. I'll use the touch command to create a test.txt file. I'll then cd up one directory. That leaves us back in our practice directory, home, student, practice. I'll clear the screen to give us more work. Now we can still see that we have the desktop directory that we copied over. But using the -R for recursion to the ls command, we can also see that it now includes a test.txt file within. To remove the files within the desktop directory, we'll use the rm-r file. To delete the files within the desktop directory, we'll need to use the rm command with the option -r to remove the files within the desktop directory. Now when we say ls, we see that the directory and its contents are now gone. Let's copy it back here so we can learn one more command. Now we have another copy of this. When removing a directory, even if it's empty, the rm command should throw a flag. The rm command by itself without flags will not remove directories. We have another command, rmdir, or remove directory, for this purpose. Listing out the contents, you can see the directory has now been removed. That concludes our section on command line file management. Join me in our next video for a guided exercise on this same subject. I look forward to seeing you there.